I am so curious to see how this starting rotation shapes out because we talked for the past couple of years about the famous Joe Torre quote where it's like I'm not going to have to make a decision, somebody's going to get hurt, and the rotation will kind of fill out itself. And obviously you hope that's not the case, but arm injuries happen. We saw it last year. It wasn't an arm injury, but we saw it last year with Michael Lorenzen, right? The Tigers have put themselves in a situation that, barring something weird, decisions are going to have to be made because you more or less have 7 starting pitchers that you either feel really good about or all right, all right. And that goes from Scooble and Gibson Long, I think, is sort of like the end of that rotation. You got Manning, you got Mize, you got Maedo Flaherty that you brought in, and Reese Olson. So, like, you have guys there, and people that I would consider in the know are talking about how this is not going to be a 6-man rotation. So it's going so now you're cutting off 2. And then when again, people in the know talk about how much promise Reese Olson showed last year, it's like, well, he can't just throw him in the bullpen. Like, he's too valuable. And it's like, well, somebody's going to have to go in the bullpen. And it would be weird to me to have really any of them in the bull. Not, I wouldn't say all of them, but 5/7 of them, maybe 6. It would be weird to me to see him at bullpen guys. So, like, your starting
Mhm.
rotation, you did 6. You had Scooble, Maeda, Mize, Olson, Manny, Flaherty. Uh, I just am very curious to see how the Tigers are going to handle this because again, 2 of those are free agent additions that you either paid a pretty penny or you gave them 2 years. So, and one coming off Tommy. Like, I am fascinated to see how this plays out and how they handle it.
Kieran, have you ever watched AJ Hinch manage a series of baseball?
Time or two.
You think it's going to be conventional? It's not. It's not. I got your answer. I've got your answer for you. The Tiger, they're not going to start the year with a 6-man rotation. The main reason it's not about being opposed to that, it's there are too many off days. So then you're really giving guys 7, 8 days off. It's too much rest. So they're not going to do that. The chances of all 6, I think Gibson Long is most likely to start in Toledo. He did good things last year, but there's still some refining. I don't fully consider him in this conversation. The chances all 6 guys get out of camp healthy is really slim, but let's say they do. The answer is going to be piggyback starts. You're going to see, I don't know if this is exactly what it'll be, but something like Matt Manning and Reese Olson will pitch, 3 innings at a time on the same day. Or maybe like a Mize, they're probably going to have this thing about, like, I'm sure the word ramp will be used at some point. We're going to ramp him up to a full workload. So maybe it's like Mize and Olson piggyback off each other. I think you're going to see basically 6 guys in a 5-man rotation. We've watched AJ Hinch do this before, both early in the season and late in the season. I think 2021 when he was kind of tapering the workloads of Mize and Scooble. They both still got injured. I think that is how they will navigate this until either someone pitches themselves out of the conversation or there's an injury and then suddenly, all right, we got a 5-man rotation again.
That's another thing too. How they handle the innings aspect of this throughout the year will be interesting because the guys that you would like to have a lot of innings the past couple of years have gotten hurt. So it's one of those the ultimate example of the inexact science as it is the managing arms, right? And let's focus on Mize for a second because are we at the point now where we have to reevaluate expectations? I talk about this a lot for a lot of guys. And I don't know. This is not me leading you on here, Cody. I don't know how to view Casey Mize because what was it, 39 starts, right? 39 career starts, and innings count's not that high. I think there's a world where he could have come back last year, and people need to remember it wasn't like Tommy John in the traditional sense of what we think of Tommy John. It was more or less like a loose tendon as opposed to, correct me if I'm wrong here, like a stretched out loose tendon as opposed to a pulled one. He had that
It
amazing.
wasn't torn. It was
Yeah,
just so stretched that it wasn't fully functional. His
right.
UCL. Yeah.
Yeah. So
But he had a
everyone,
back surgery too. Let's not forget that. I think the back procedure is the bigger deal. We don't know a lot about it, which makes me think it's serious. He doesn't really want to talk about it.
Very good point as well. And this guy, like I said, he was 1-1. He had the double A no hitter in his debut, a double A debut, not debut, period. And he's kind of a guy without a place. Like he's a starting rotation guy, but place wise, kind of without a place right now. And, you talked about the ramping up part of it. It's like he ought to be as fresh as anybody. He ought to be pretty dang fresh. And I don't know how to feel about that photo that was circling around where he looked like he was throwing off a semi mound. I don't know what exactly to call it, and the
Like the Four
metrics.
Seasons where they had the Rudy Giuliani press conference. What it looked
Yeah,
like, and that's where it was.
yeah, it was. One. I'm sure it didn't make Federer like excited to see that throwing service. Let's just put it like that. And and I'm not gonna try to recall all the numbers, but they weren't like, oh, look at that. You know. So like my situation is very interesting, and you wrote about it on one of your early storyline stories that's published on the Athletic. So the Mize situation. What's kind of your assessment leading in, and what do you think is most likely to happen for him?
Well, I've said I think he's the single guy I'm most interested to watch because I don't know where to set expectations. There's a part of me that doesn't think they necessarily need to be reset. There's a part of me that thinks he could come out, have two great starts, and suddenly expectations are high as ever. This guy was 1-1 for a reason. My first question when I see Casey Mize this spring is going to be pretty simple. When's the last time you pitched a baseball game fully healthy? Because it seems like that I don't recall his exact quote, but he indicated this back issue that he had repaired surgically had been bothering him for a long time, as in possibly years. This guy might not have been fully healthy since Auburn. So how good can he be if he is now fully healthy? Is he going to be basically a different pitcher? Could his fastball command be there? A repaired UCL? Did the UCL damage have something to do with why he couldn't throw his splitter quite like he could coming out of the draft? There are a lot of unanswered questions there that will only be answered on the field. I think it could be a really good thing that this guy is back and healthy. Um, so I'm not quite writing off Casey Mize or even lowering the potential ceiling for Casey Mize until we see him pitch a little bit. I guess the most likely scenario is probably like, okay, he he's solid. That was probably always the most likely scenario. Actually, even out of the draft, he wasn't necessarily pegged as like this guy's an ace, he's a Hall of Famer, but it was just he had he had a really high floor. So look at what he did in 2021. I think he had like a 3.71 ERA through 150 innings. I mean, that's probably a good indicator of what you hope Casey Mize can be this year. And if he does that, you feel pretty good.